You don't need to have had a top GPA to get into grad school or even get into a top grad program. Your GPA is just one piece of the overall package that demonstrates, are you qualified and capable of being successful in this graduate program if you're admitted. And there are many ways to show your qualifications, not just your GPA. So today we're going to talk about 6 strategies you can use to overcome a low GPA in your application. I'm Lauren Valdez. Please like and subscribe to keep these videos coming. And you can also join my free office hours if you check out the link below to ask your questions or get your essays read. First, I want to mention that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves when it comes to our GPA, and we do a lot of self-shaming and self-guilt when we don't achieve with our GPA. And that's totally normal and natural. And plenty of people do not go through life with, top GPAs and still go on to have meaningful careers and be successful in life. Your GPA is not a barrier to you being able to have a great career and a great life. So don't beat yourself up about having a low GPA. Instead, focus on your strengths and other areas where you can demonstrate what your skills are. Many universities have a commitment to improving access to higher ed for underrepresented communities and first-generation college students, and they get that a GPA does not give enough context into a person and to their abilities, because people have lots of things going on in their lives. And so there are other ways you can, show that you have skills outside of just your GPA. The first strategy is justifying a low GPA. There's times when life happens, things get hard, and you may have a low GPA for just a short period of time. If that's the case, then you can definitely justify that in your applications. For example, you may have started out with a low GPA and then shown improvement over your 4 years. That's something that is not a deal breaker for universities. They like to see things like improvement because many of us start out college and we have to develop study skills. We have to, adjust to college life and all of that stuff. And so it's perfectly understandable when universities see that you may start with a low GPA and end on a higher note. So if your total GPA over the 4 years is on the lower side, but the last, year or two are higher, then that's great. And you can talk about that in your essays, how you worked to improve over the years. Another strategy is describing any tough life circumstances that may have impacted your ability to do well in school or your ability to study. I've seen many people do this in their essays where they talk about working a lot of hours while they're in school to support themselves and or support their families. There's people who have mental health challenges after dealing with something hard in school, or maybe you've lost a loved one, or maybe you're taking care of someone sick. There are many, many reasons why there may be a period where you had a low GPA. I totally understand this. My first year of grad school, I had cancer and I was definitely operating at 50% capacity while I was dealing with taking care of my body and still going to school. And universities understand that. So describe those situations in your essays, or you can even have, a letter of rec writer talk about one of those circumstances. In a statement of purpose, you don't want to distract from the overall program goals and what you want to get out of the program, but you can state something brief like this example. I struggled with my classes in my second year when my mom was dying of cancer. Losing her was challenging, but I know she wanted me to stay focused and achieve the things we dreamed about together. I came back the next year with a renewed commitment to my studies. So see how this is really brief. It's not a whole long story, but there are cases where you may want to expand on something challenging if it has something to do with the program you're applying to, or in a personal statement or a diversity statement where you want to talk about some adversity you faced or how you've overcome challenges. You can definitely go into a situation like this in more detail. Just remember, when you talk about tough circumstances, you want to focus on how you rose to the occasion for the challenge and how you overcame that challenge and how you are in a better place now, so that you don't leave them with doubts about your ability to be successful in the program. And that brings us to our next set of strategies, which are demonstrating that you can be successful if you are admitted to the program. One way you can do that is by getting good grades in relevant coursework. So say your overall GPA is on the lower side, but you had good grades in courses that are relevant to the program. Like say you're applying to engineering grad school and you did well in your engineering classes, but you did poorly maybe in like your English or general ed classes. That's totally okay if you show that you can do well in the classes that matter to that program. And I could tell you, having been on an admissions committee, that we look at things like that on your transcript if we have a question about, oh, is this person going to be able to handle the caliber of this program? We will look at the transcript and say, well, they've done well in relevant coursework, so we'll let the rest of the GPA slide. So don't worry too much if your overall GPA is on the lower side, but you've done well in courses that matter to the grad program. Another way you can show your ability to be successful in the program is through letters of recommendation, where you have other people vouch for your skills and your abilities, which is why you want strong letters of recommendation where people can make a connection between what they know about you and the program you're applying for. So you want your letter writers to speak to your abilities and the skills that you have that will help you be successful in the program. You can also have the letter writer mention special circumstances that you may have been going through. If there's someone, who knew a situation or you feel comfortable asking them to mention it. For example, I had a student who worked many hours outside of school to support herself and her family, and she was also a top performer in my class. And I thought that was very impressive, so I wrote about that in her letter of rec, that she could manage many things at the same time and still prove that she could be successful. If you are still in school, take the time to go to office hours and get to know your professors. I know it seems intimidating, but they really do enjoy when students come and talk to them. If you don't understand something, go ask them questions. Sometimes when you feel like you're asking like a dumb question, it's actually something really interesting and smart and something they would love to have a discussion around. So don't feel intimidated. Go get to know your professors. I had a professor where I didn't even get an A in the first class I took with her, but I would go to her office hours and we would have great discussions. But I struggled on the midterms and the essays with answering the questions right, but I understood the concepts and could have a great dialogue about them. And she wrote me excellent letters of recs for the programs that I applied to. The next strategy you want to take on is networking and support. You also want to network with people at the university you're applying for, whether that is professors, the administrative staff, and or current students. And all those people can give you insight into what the program's looking for, and they might also be people who end up on an admissions committee and remember your name and could remember that they talked to you and liked you or whatnot. So definitely take the time to do some of that outreach, although it's intimidating. You can start with the admin staff. Oftentimes they can tell you about resources for applying. They're really great at answering your questions about what they're looking for in an applicant, things like that. And they may be willing to connect you with current students and professors, which is what I found in my experience. When I asked questions about something and wanted to know more, they would connect me with a professor who had relevant experience or with students who could answer those questions directly about being in the program. So the admin staff is a really great place to reach out to when you're applying. Additionally, there may be resources on the campus that you have access to for students that are applying. Many universities have a commitment to increasing access to higher ed, especially for students of color, first generation college students, students from underrepresented backgrounds, students who have financial challenges with going to college. So definitely ask about those resources. For example, that many universities have an Office of Diversity where they provide different services to help increase the diversity of their student body. So you can ask about those offices and what resources they have. For example, when I applied to grad school, a few universities had resources for underrepresented students. At MIT, there was a service offered for students of color where current enrolled students in the program who were also students of color volunteered to read your essays and give you feedback on your essay, which is a really awesome service that the students created for themselves because they wanted to increase diversity on their own campus in their own program. Another example is the Harvard Graduate School of Education has a diversity scholarship where they fly potential students out to their campus to get advising and check out the program firsthand. So there's lots of resources like that at universities. So definitely reach out and learn about those resources. And when you have access to those kinds of resources, you improve your overall application package, which makes you stand out even more and puts less emphasis on your GPA. You might also want to check out resources like that at your alma mater. For example, I know at my university, there was lots of resources for first-gen college students and students of color to get help on their grad school applications from the current university. So check out those resources because you want to utilize all those things that will help give you an edge in your application. And finally, the best strategy to overcome a low GPA is through real-world experience. This can be jobs, internships, volunteering, research study awards like the Fulbright that I always talk about. It could also be programs like AmeriCorps, Teach for America, all those kinds of things, as well as starting your own community projects. Those are all ways that demonstrate your experience in a field that you can talk about in an application. And I know it might seem like a catch-22, like how do you get experience if you've never studied that thing? But there are many ways to go about it, although it just may take a little bit longer. For example, I studied architecture in undergrad and I was interested in public health, but I had never taken a public health class. The only science class I took in undergrad, I got a C in. So I did not look like someone who would have been a strong candidate to a public health school if I was applying right after undergrad. But I took time to explore my interest in public health while doing other things. So I started actually reading a ton on public health, and I started blogging about public health issues in my community, like the terrible air quality. And with that, I actually got a job blogging professionally for a radio program. And my only experience was the experience I created for myself by starting to blog, which no one had to hire me to do that. I just took my time to do that. And then while I was doing this blogging, I also applied for a Fulbright fellowship to go study public health in Brazil. So I got that award. I went to Brazil, and all of that gave me lots of relevant experience. So by the time I applied to grad school, I was able to demonstrate that I could be successful studying public health, even though I never had like a real daytime job studying public health, and I never studied public health in school. So you can look for opportunities you can create for yourself to be able to create those experiences. And I know many people are eager to apply to grad school right after undergrad, but really you are a much, much stronger candidate if you take some time to go out and gain some experiences so that you can be a top candidate when you apply to grad school. And finally, what I want to leave you with is your GPA is just a number. It doesn't mean anything about the level of your intelligence or what you're capable of. Some of the most successful people I know in their careers and their business are people who were not that successful in school. So don't beat yourself up over a low GPA. You just have to find a different pathway to get to where you want to go. If you still have questions or are concerned about your GPA, come to office hours and we can talk through a strategy that works for you. Also, in the comments below, vote on what you want to see the next video on. When you sign up for my newsletter, you'll be the first to know about upcoming office hours and any new resources I create.